Hi, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours for week 5 of Co-Founders Lab Accelerator. Great to see that a few of you guys are here today. So one of the things that I wanted to sort of add into our session today is just to review the portion on due diligence that we didn't really have enough time to cover in Tuesday's session. I really thought it would be great to have Kaya share with you all of his amazing tips and tricks for getting your presentations ready for next week. So, we can cover due diligence now, which is something that happens a little bit further down the road. But before we get into that, definitely want to just open it up to questions, comments, thoughts from the group. If anybody has something that they're dealing with or, ideas for their presentation that they'd like to go over or financial model, just raise your hand and we will get to you. Okay. Hi, Brian. Hello.
Hi, Erica. I was just wondering if there are really good resources for putting together an elevator pitch. I think that's what I'm struggling with because
Mm,
my solution is highly technical in nature and it's very difficult to get, somebody even accustomed to listen to technology speak. So,
yeah. Well, that's a very good question. The whole point of the elevator pitch, I mean, each person's pitch is going to be unique, but the idea is to really sort of condense what you're doing, right? So the problem that you're solving, how you're solving it, and who you're solving it for into about a 1 minute pitch that takes the length of an elevator ride. So the best way to really get feedback is just to actually like make the pitch to people and get feedback and we can sort of refine it. So I don't know if you have like something kind of drafted that you've been working on that you want to run past me as a starting point.
give me a little bit of time to find it. So go ahead and
Okay.
I'll put my hand up a little bit later on.
Okay, awesome. So we will get back to that. Great. Anybody else? Let me see here. So that's the attendee number. Okay, so since we don't have any questions right off the bat, I do want to just go over what's happening next week. So next week is our final week. We will be using the time on Tuesday to kind of let you guys practice your elevator pitches with me, to let you, sort of go through any questions that you have around your presentation. And then on Thursday, we're actually going to be doing our virtual demo day. So probably tomorrow afternoon, you'll be receiving a link to a sign up, and in fact, I'll just put it into the Slack channel today since I already have it ready, anyways. But it'll also be in the email that you receive at the end of each week that will let each of you sign up for a slot to pitch on Thursday. We've got 4 really amazing investors participating. One guy who's like running one of the top accelerators here. And a few other super angels and a VC, all to give you some amazing feedback on your pitches in real time and, potentially investors. One of the people that is attending is actually an investor from this family office that I mentioned to everyone about, who's actually looking for, very early stage investments. Basically, he invests about $10,000 at the start, but then also takes warrants to provide investment down the line. So it's great because not only, for some of you who are very early, do you get a little bit of capital up front, but then you have a connection with an investor who's interested in providing follow-on capital over the years as you grow. So I think that's going to be really useful for everybody. So you will get that sheet. Make sure that you sign up. You can choose to do an elevator pitch, which you'll get 1 minute for your pitch and 1 minute for feedback. Or you can actually do your slide presentation, which you'll get 5 minutes to do your presentation, plus about another 2 minutes for Q&A from the investors. Great. So since I don't see any hands right now, and I know some of you guys might be waiting, I'm going to start with our due diligence section of the presentation that I usually give. We won't need to really probably go over investor presentations again since we did it with Kaya, but if for whatever reason there's more time and you guys want to see kind of my presentation on investor presentations, we can do that as well. So you guys all know who I am, Erica Dagnan-Minahan, managing partner at 1000 Angels and director for Co-Founders Lab Accelerator. I've been making early stage investments for over 10 years. I've probably invested in over 100 startups, so a lot of experience, and love working with folks at the early stage. So really what today's presentation about is we're going to learn, number one, you guys learned on Tuesday how to put together an investor presentation, but the one thing that we didn't talk about is really the due diligence process and what you guys should be expecting during that process. So, why are we doing all this? Well, fundraising is so important because about 65% of companies fail because of lack of access to capital. And at the end of the day, fundraising is a completely separate skill than, running your business, right? Starting and running your business. There's sort of a whole different way of doing it, whole different sort of set of expectations that are involved. And so the more familiar you can get with them in advance, the more likely you'll be successful with raising money. Hi, Scott. I saw you have a question.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you in your
No,
presentation. I
it's
was going to
okay.
ask
Go
you
ahead.
something else.
Okay,
I
go
just had a
ahead. Let's
question.
address it
It
first.
sort of went along with the conversation yesterday about the marketplace
Mm-hmm.
and in the MVP process. I noticed there are some standalone marketplace softwares out there that you can purchase that are not a big investment. Is
Mm-hmm.
that something that would be advised kind of as a MVP stage for startup?
I mean, I think
Or
that that's perfectly good, right? So as you're kind of testing the demand for your product, you always want to find really low cost ways to get things out there. So yes, if there are kind of off the shelf products that you can buy and sort of test them out before you go and maybe build your own custom product, I think that that's a fantastic approach because it helps you sort of establish proof that there's demand and that you have a path to traction.
yeah, would investors look negatively upon that because it's nothing proprietary? Or
No, I don't think so. Not in the beginning, right? So, if you can say, hey, look, here's my idea. I use this off-the-shelf software, and, we've actually shown that we, can acquire customers and we've gotten traction with it. Now I want to raise money to build my own proprietary system. That makes me feel a lot better than, hey, I've done nothing and I want you to give me money to build my own proprietary system,
yeah,
right? So
okay,
you're definitely better off starting out there if that's where you need to start.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Wonderful. So we don't want that to happen to you. So what are the different sources of early stage funding? Well, there's crowdfunding, which comes in a lot of different ways. One of the things that I love as a crowdfunding methodology is pre-purchases of your products. If you have the type of, you have like an enterprise software, right? Or, something where you're selling a membership, sometimes you can actually get people to commit to making a purchase of your product in advance to help you capitalize your business. It's wonderful because it's non-dilutive equity. Then you have angel investors, which are usually high net worth individuals or angel groups, right? Organized angels. And then, of course, seed venture capital sources, which is like seed VC funds, who are typically your first institutional investor. And some of these funds will usually write checks of like $100,000 to $250,000, and are okay with working with people at the very early stage. But you still have to show traction. You still have to show that you have a team. They're rarely investing, off of the back of a napkin unless you're a proven founder who's had success previously. Some of the other sources of capital that you may end up relying on are, of course, bootstrapping, which is something that a lot of successful companies have done. So, think about it as an option. Accelerators. So, there are lots of accelerators that actually invest capital. I know Kaya was talking about Startup Chili. So he was in Startup Chili where he got 50 grand. He was in Dream It where he got like 25 grand. Plus they participated in his seed round. He was in 500 startups, which also, invest money. So, it's definitely worth looking into these things. There are also like some amazing business plan competitions. I actually started a Slack channel that, I'm putting together a list for you guys of, high stakes business plan competitions that award up to $1 million in investment, and accelerators, top accelerators that also provide capital. The other source is obviously friends and family. It's good to start cultivating your relationship with friends and families who might potentially want to be investors from an early stage, and really to treat them as investors, right? Not just like, oh, I'm asking you for money, but to pitch them the same way you would pitch a traditional investor. And then of course bank loans and credit cards. So credit cards, obviously very high cost of capital, and then bank loans are typically pretty hard to secure because banks don't like to make loans for things like marketing and development expense. So when we look at the different types of rounds that companies go through, I want to give you guys a sense for the size and valuations that you can expect. So a lot of you are still at the pre-seed round, which means raising anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000, usually the first round. This is also known kind of as a friends and family round. You might get some angels in here. Typically, valuations here are between 1 and 3 million, and you'll most often be using a convertible note or some other very simple security to do this sort of round. And the valuation is reflected as pretty low. Once you get to a seed round, which is kind of like $500,000 to $2.5 million, really kind of more like $1 million to $2.5 million, valuations tend to be kind of in the $2 to $6 million range. If you live in, some very rural, obscure area, it's probably going to be on the lower end. If you live in like New York or you're in Silicon Valley, you'll see valuations on the higher end. But these seed rounds are usually done by angels, super angels, and seed stage or micro VCs. And then once you get to kind of 3 million and more, you're looking at Series A, Series B, Series C, which are typically funded by venture capital firms. So some of the different funding vehicles that you'll be approached with include, equity rounds and convertible notes. So even though equity is technically equity and notes are technically debt, they're really kind of both of a bit of a hybrid, right? So they're really equity at the end of the day, but most of these investments require that the investors be paid back their original capital plus some hurdle rate of return, and then they're going to participate as well in the upside of your business. So for equity rounds, you might see a preferred stock issuance. You might see a SAFE agreement, which is a simple agreement for future equity. You might see a KISS security, which is the keep it simple security. All of these are basically equity vehicles. And typically that means that the round has a price assigned to it. The investors are getting some rights. There's a board structure. There's what we talked about, the liquidation preference in place, which means that the investors have the right to get return of their capital before you as a founder participate in any of the gains. And you can see that the cost for equity rounds, that would be a preferred equity, not the safe note or the KISS, is usually around 20 to 50,000. So why do people sometimes do convertible notes instead? Well, for one thing, it's a lot less expensive. It typically only costs about 5 to 10,000. So if you're only raising, 200,000 to 500,000, it doesn't really make sense to spend 20 to 50,000 just on the documentation. So for that, we're going to use a less expensive, simpler security of a convertible note, which will usually comprise of an interest rate on the note, a discount rate. So the note will convert into equity at a discount to of X percent to the next round. A valuation cap, which means that the conversion price of the note can't exceed a certain amount, and then also maturity date. So if you haven't raised around between today and the maturity date, it'll automatically convert into equity at a pre-agreed upon price. So the key terminology that you're going to need to become familiar with if you decide to go out and raise capital are, a couple things. So number one, your cap table. So your cap table is just a simple Excel spreadsheet that shows who owns exactly what in your business. So who owns what equity, what options are outstanding, what warrants are outstanding, any convertible notes that you have issued. And that basically shows investors the capital structure of your company. Then you have a term sheet, right, which outlines, sort of the basic in plain English, the terms of any agreement that you have from investors to come into your company. And then you'll also probably want to know the difference between common and preferred stock, as well as common versus founder stock versus preferred stock. So the main difference between common and preferred is that preferred has that liquidation preferencing that we talked about, which means that as an investor in preferred stock, I'm guaranteed a return of my capital before common shareholders participate in any gains. And with founder stock, the main difference is that it usually vests over a period of years. Another thing that you might want to become familiar with is dilution. And so dilution basically shows how your equity interest and your investors' equity interest might change over time. Hi, Scott, did you have another question?
Yeah, I did. On the convertible notes, are they typically deferred interest, or do you see its principal and interest paid out over a period of years or a
Yeah,
couple
so
years?
it's what's known as like paid in kind. So if the interest rate is 8% and I invested 100,000, at the end of the first year, my principal balance is now going to be 108,000.
Okay.
So you don't have to actually pay it in cash. So the rule of thumb is that you should always raise enough in any round to cover about 18 to 24 months of runway. And that probably isn't going to happen at like the pre-seed round, but once you get to sort of your seed and Series A, people are expecting that you're going to have enough capital to survive for the next 18 to 24 months. Because it's not great for investors if you're constantly spending time raising capital and running out of money. So before you can secure investment, you have to go through the diligence process, right? So what are investors looking for during this diligence process? Well, they want to know who's the team, why are you better, than other people out there who might want to do the same idea? What is the validity of your idea? Is it a good one? Does it make sense? Do you have any traction? Can you show that people, what evidence do you have that people actually want your product and that they're willing to pay for it or use it so that you can monetize it? What's the size of the market opportunity? Typically, you need to be looking at least $1 billion market opportunity for this to be attractive to investors. And then also, what are kind of the competitive forces, right? Who are your competitors? What's the nature of your industry? Where are prices heading? Is there anything to provide competitive insulation against competitors for you? So as you go through the team, they're going to be wondering, okay, how many full-time people? If it's just you, that's usually a little bit of a red flag for them. So even if you haven't brought on co-founders yet, we want to see that you've identified, like, hey, here are the 3 people who are going to come on board full-time, like once I secure this round. We want to know about your backgrounds, right? So what about your background makes you the right person to do this startup? And we've invested in companies even where the founder is like only like 18, but is able to prove like, wow, I have a really great background and a team with a relevant background to make this happen. And then lastly, do I trust the founders, right? Like, we're giving you money, we want to know you're not going to just sort of run off with the cash. So it's very important to make sure that you don't lie, that you don't exaggerate things, that you're very honest during the process, because during the due diligence process, any of these sort of exaggerations will come out, and once the investors feel that they can't even trust you on a small thing, the word is going to get out and it's going to be impossible for you to raise money. So I've actually seen that happen where we had founders who were really smart, great backgrounds, amazing, but they lied about something completely unnecessary during the diligence process, and it got out and it basically torpedoed them. So just make sure that you're very honest. When we're evaluating the market, we want to think, okay, how attractive is the market size? What's our competitive landscape? Is this market growing, or is it something that's shrinking, right? And also, will it be disrupted, right? Are there some new technologies coming down the line that, even though this is a good market opportunity today, in 3 to 5 years, it might not be attractive anymore? So on the opportunity, we want to know, how much traction do you have? How much revenue do you have? Do you have customers? Do you have a reasonable business model? Is this something that people actually need? These are the questions that investors are going to be asking themselves during the process. This is a list of just a few of the questions that investors are going to ask you during diligence, so make sure you know the answers. What is your burn rate, right? Which means how much money are you spending on a monthly basis? Do you have an idea of when you're going to reach break even? Do you know your competitors and your unique competitive advantage? What's the size of your market, right? What's your month over month growth if you have it? What's your cost of customer acquisition and your customer lifetime value? For enterprise, what's the length of the sales cycle? What are you using the money for? So this list of questions, and you guys will have this slide, are pretty much typical ones that you need to be ready to answer. But investors are always going to come up with their own unique questions specifically pertaining to your business. So, one thing to remember is a lot of investors will ask the same questions. So write down the questions. Even maybe when you go into a meeting, you might want to record yourself so you can go back over it and think about, okay, how did I answer this question? Did I not have an answer? Can I implement some of the feedback that I got here in a way that's valuable to my company? So if we look at the timeline, and most people aim for about a 6-month timeline for fundraising. It can end up being a lot longer though. Here's sort of a little timeline of the various phases that you're going to go through. So you'll have your initial introduction. You might email them an executive summary or your pitch deck. You'll schedule a first call. If they like your call, you might meet in person. You might need another follow-up meeting. They're going to ask for all of your diligence materials. Then you'll get a term sheet. Once the term sheet is signed, you actually, start working on producing the documentation, and that's what actually costs you a bit of money. Once the documents are all signed and the cash is wired, you're done. So from getting from phase 1 to phase 7 can actually take quite a bit of time. So, don't expect it to happen in a month or two. It generally takes a decent amount of time. So during due diligence, really, what they want to know is the big picture vision and an overview of where you and your venture are heading. So have a plan. Make sure that you follow up, right? So just because you talk to somebody once, doesn't mean that you can't keep the conversation going. Because if you meet them kind of in month 1, by month 4, month 5, your company might actually be in a better position where it's more interesting to them as an investment. Hi, I think Matt has a question. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Erica. Just a quick question. The term sheet that will cost anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000. Who pays for that?
Well, that's actually not the term sheet. That's the the deal docs.
The deal docs.
Yeah.
Got it.
So you will be paying for that.
Okay.
Yeah. So usually
Before
it's the
we have
company.
access to any of the money from the investor, we will need some money put away for
Yeah, you
the
can
deal
kind of,
sheets.
yeah, you sort of, you'll kind of end up negotiating it like how it's paid with them, maybe even with your lawyers, you can, wait until you have the money to pay for the legal expense. But technically, paying your lawyers is your responsibility.
Got it. Great.
Okay, great. So, there's going to be follow-up and there's going to be more follow-up. So just remember to keep in touch because you might be, speaking with an investor that really does Series A rounds during your seed round, but, in probably 12 to 18 months, you're going to be needing to do your Series A. So you want to make sure that you keep in touch with them, keep them posted on achievements of milestones, etc., so that you build the relationship. Some of the initial investor reactions that you're going to have to get used to getting is, number one, you don't have enough traction. So if they say that, say, okay, what sort of traction would I need to have for you to be interested? And then actually make a note of that. And then you can go back to them as you start to approach that milestone. A lot of them are going to say that you're too early, so that's why you start building the relationship. And then they might say, we'd feel more comfortable if you blah, blah, blah. It might be had a CTO, had a pilot in place, whatever it is. Take your notes and make sure that as you meet those milestones that are their objections, that you follow up with them and let them know what you're doing. So another sort of big list of reasons that you might get rejected by investors. So number one, you're trying to resolve a problem that doesn't really exist. So making sure that you have that evidence as to why this is really a problem and to prove to investors, that you've established that there's an issue here is important. Customers might not be willing to pay for your service. So similarly, get the evidence that customers are willing to pay for this. Maybe you have no track record or applicable background, right? So figure out, how can I best position myself or my team as the right people to do this? It could also be that the market's hyper competitive. I mean, we had so many people, over the last couple of years with 1,000 Angels pitching, various food delivery services, and all that was really cool when like Blue Apron and Plated started. Now there's like a million competitors in the industry, and it's not really so interesting as an investment. The other thing is kind of this rule that Peter Thiel talked about in his book 0 to 1, which is that, for an investment to be attractive, it really should be a 10x improvement over the existing solutions. So if your product or service is only like a marginal improvement over existing solutions, it's probably not going to be that attractive to investors. Like, we want to see something that is, really creating a lot of value so that it's very obvious to users why they should switch from their existing solution to yours. Another reason is that the market's too small, so there's not enough return potential. Kaya talked yesterday about the fact that investors are looking for a 10x return on their investment. So that means that for every dollar that you take from me, you have to turn it into $10 for me, within the next sort of 5 to 10 years. And in order to do that, you really need a decent market size. Next is that you're not really making any month-over-month progress. There's not that growth that they're looking for. Your projections are not realistic, or that you might just not fit with their investment thesis or stage. So these are all kind of things to think about as you're going into an investor to, sort of be ready for the objections that they might have. And as we say, treat objections as requests for further information. I think Kaya said you're going to talk to something like 100 investors for every 500K that you raise. So just realize that you're going to get a lot of no's, and you can't let it bother you. If we look at, the funnel of venture capital, each partner is looking at about 1,000 companies. And, some of them will make it to screening, much fewer will make it to partner review, even fewer will make it to diligence. And then a few of them are going to get a yes or no decision. And so, if we look at this funnel, about 10% of companies actually make it into the partner meeting, but only 0.2% of companies that apply actually receive VC investment. So it's a really hard hurdle, and it's going to take a lot of work and commitment on your part to be successful with VC investment. So we'll talk a little bit about the elevator pitch because we didn't really cover that yesterday. But you can start with a quick elevator pitch, and then you want to let the investor start asking questions, right? The idea is to kind of pique their interest, not to lecture them for minutes. So it should only be about 60 seconds long. Just be very clear about the product. Don't use any like big complicated words or buzzwords. I don't want to hear this as a multi-platform distribution channel software product. Like, just explain very simply what this is. And then just remember that, you're trying to get them interested in the investment opportunity, not just the product. So don't just tell me about your product, tell me why this is interesting as an investment. Highlight your product and your solution, and then, explain a little bit about why I should care, right? This is a $10 billion unaddressed market, or we've had, 40% month-over-month growth for the last 6 months. Basically, the idea here is just to leave your investors wanting a follow-up meeting. So things to avoid, rambling. So that's why you want to practice so that you sound very eloquent. Otherwise, you're not going to impress anybody. And this happens a lot. People who haven't practiced their elevator pitch tend to just kind of ramble on and on. The second is that you didn't highlight the market potential, right? So you talked a lot about the product, but not why there's a great market for this. Third is the complex terminology. So, especially when people get very technical and use a lot of technical buzzwords, it's impossible for me to know what you're actually talking about. And you really don't need to be heavy on the details. This is just an elevator pitch, so we want, the 10,000-foot view. One of the things for advice when you're pitching in person, and I know that for our demo day next week, you're going to be pitching virtually, but, some of these things still apply. Number one is, really show your personality. We want to know who you are as a person. We don't want this to be like a dry thing. We want to see that you're inspirational and you can lead a team and motivate a team and people like you. Definitely don't wear a suit or like really fancy clothes. You know, you're startup founders, you're not investment bankers, so you don't need to show up in, you know, an expensive suit. You want to demonstrate your passion and your track record. And you always want to demo the product if possible. And I know Kaya put that into his list of things. So if there's a way to put in a little product demo, if that's applicable to your product or service, you should do that. You also want to show your long-term vision, right? So we want to talk about what you're doing right now, but you know, maybe one slide that really kind of shows here's the long-term vision that I have for this business, so that people can understand that, you know, you're somebody who understands the bigger picture. Very, very important is, you know, keep your cool when you're questioned. Don't get defensive. One of the things that a lot of really great founders do is they always start off with saying, "Oh, that's a very good question," and then they answer it, because it kind of puts you into a frame of mind that you're, you know, to even just tell yourself, "Hey, I'm answering this question in a positive way. I'm not going to get defensive." And then, as I always say, show them the money, right? I mean, we want to see why this investment can make me money. I mean, that's what I care about. It's not helping you. It's not about getting your product into the world. It's about actually making money. And really just remember that your only goal here is just to get them interested in a next meeting. And that's basically what you need to accomplish. So pitch deck, we sort of talked about this yesterday, so I won't go over it too much, but you know, this sort of has my guidelines for a pitch deck. Title, slide, logo with your company name. Then I would get into the problem, and you guys have, you know, several pitch deck templates available to you on SlideBean. So, you know, this is just one more example of what, you know, I kind of think works for the type of 5-minute presentation that you're going to have on Thursday. So we highlight the problem. You know, this is not an actual slide. This is just tips on when you're highlighting the problem. Make sure it's very clear and to the point, just a few bullet points, and show a powerful image. Then you want to have a slide that shows your solution. Just one solution. Don't, you know, overwhelm us with a million different things that you're going to do. This should be very clear and concise. Like, I want to be able to understand, you know, very succinctly, what is your company's solution? What are you doing to solve the problem? Then I want to see what your market size is, so that I know it's big enough. You know, be reasonable with your estimates. Don't, you know, include sort of things that aren't really part of your market. You want to show your addressable market, and it's always helpful if you actually have some references to credible sources as to where you got your information from. Then you can have a nice slide that shows your product. Maybe this slide has a little video demo in it or something. When it comes to video demos, don't let your presentation be mostly video demo. I keep the video demo very short, to maybe like 30 seconds, because as an investor, I want to hear from you, not just watching a video. And I see a lot of people who, you know, sort of rely on the video. They don't want to explain it themselves, and that's just not very inspiring. So then we can do one slide on your product features. I know that Kaya had actually given the advice of using product benefits, and I think that's actually kind of a nicer idea. So, you know, here I have features. You might want to position it as benefits. Highlight your core features. Don't try to cover everything. You know, use images. And then I love this like competitor, you know, grid. This is something that's commonly used. So you always want to make sure that you're in the upper right-hand corner, and then you can show where all of your competitors are, you know, on sort of the spectrum of, you know, what market you're accomplishing or servicing that they're not addressing. You know, how do you compare against them? How are you different and better? That's what you want to talk to during the slide. So why we're better, you can actually make a slide, you know, to outline these bullet points. We're talking about your competitive advantages. That could be patents or intellectual property, any business deals that you've already got underway, distribution channels that you've gotten access to, and any other barriers to entry for your company. If you have traction, show it on a slide. Everyone loves to see the hockey stick thing. That helps get investors' attention. And just show one or two metrics. You don't need to show, you know, tons. If you have user engagement, this is great. So downloads, daily, weekly, monthly active users, you know, the level of engagement, so how long people are on the site, repeat visits, etc. These are all interesting metrics to share if you have positive ones. And then you want to explain your business or revenue model, right? So how are you guys actually making money? And so some of the things that you might want to show here is your average revenue per user, you know, how long the sales cycle is, recurring revenue versus one-time revenue, your customer acquisition cost, lifetime value, and churn. You want to highlight any of these metrics that are positive around your business model. Then always show a beautiful slide with the management team. Make sure you have pictures, and basically don't put too much text here. Show a photo of yourself, your name, your title, and then where it says logo swarm, that's kind of where you just want to show like little logos. So if you worked at Google and Apple and you went to MIT, you want to put all those little logos there. You don't need to like write it out in text, but put logos of any great organizations that your business is affiliated with. Same thing for your advisors. Use a great image, keep it simple. And then, this slide is kind of up for debate. I personally like it much better when companies include a financial projection slide because, just very top line, because I can get a sense of, okay, how big can this business be? If I look at this and it shows that you're only getting to, 3 million in revenue by year 5, I'm probably not that interested. So I kind of want to see, what's the long-term potential at a high level for this business. And just make sure that they're reasonable. If you're showing, oh, look, I've had some people that send us the model and they're like, we're going to be earning, $1 billion a year in year 5. It's a little bit unreasonable. So, you just want to show that you can get to cash flow positive. Here. We're sort of showing, okay, this company is going to burn through a little bit over $1 million over the next few years. I can get a sense of their cash flow needs. And then the last slide, which will show, here's what I'm raising, here's my round, here are my existing investors, use logos here if you can, that's great. And then here's how much we've previously raised to date. So they know how much capital you've taken so far, and then a quick use of proceeds. So what am I actually using the proceeds for? Usually it's development expense, marketing expense, inventory, new hires. You want to actually sort of put a little chart to show how the money is being spent. And then, of course, follow up with a great contact slide so that we know how to get in touch with you. So I know I ran through that pretty fast, but that's because we covered a lot of this yesterday, and I want to leave more time for just general office hours. So great. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, comments, want to practice their elevator pitch? Okay, Brian's ready. Hey, Brian.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to practice the elevator pitch.
Awesome.
I'm not sure. At 60 seconds, it's really difficult to get it down below 60 seconds. So I'm going to get my timer out and start that. Just a second. Okay, and clock, and go. I will help small businesses solve unreliable middleware by creating a fair and transparent marketplace. And I think the tough part of my elevator pitch is that word middleware, but so I want to explain it to you as if you think of data as water, at Notion Novus we fancy ourselves data plumbers for businesses. The problem really is the current data plumbing is too unreliable. You got dropped messages, garbled messages, insecure data, and slow pipes lead to high operating costs. We believe that transparency builds reliability. When people are able to shine a light on the problem pipes and connectors, they can be fixed faster. We want to build a data plumbing solution that's based on transparency and interoperability so that components fit together more easily. Our target market is small to medium-sized business owners who lack the technical resources to do their own data plumbing. The firms they hire are prone to hide the way they build their solutions. This leads to unsupportable connections and difficulty getting help when something doesn't work. We believe that the small business market in Peoria alone is worth about $100 million. Now, our competition, as far as our competition goes, there are big, expensive firms in the data plumbing space and smaller companies that might be more affordable but have limited application coverage. My team, I've got a lot of part-time volunteers on my team, but no real full-time employees. And I think I need to get programmers on board as employees, and that's why I'm looking for funding.
Okay. So a couple pieces of feedback. You did definitely go a little bit long. So you need to sort of work on it a little bit. So one of the things I think would be really helpful is to start off with the problem, right? So you kind of got there, but that's not how you started off, right? So it'd be great for you to start off and say something like, explain the problem, right? So, uh, during my work at, and I forget where you worked right now, you were at Caterpillar or something, right?
Yeah,
Caterpillar.
correct.
So during my work at Caterpillar, I noticed there was a huge problem in enterprise software for connecting data, right? So these pipes, the plumbing that connects data, and we were spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year trying to address this problem. It's a problem not just for big companies, but also for a lot of middle market companies. And in fact, it's $100 million market opportunity just in Peoria alone, you said, or something like that. So wherever, my company is building a platform that aims to, eliminate this problem for medium-sized businesses and save them, X millions of dollars per year. Um, you know, uh, you could give a little detail on traction. I'm not sure that you did. So I would say a little bit about kind of like what traction you've had so far. So like we've already done this for like 4 companies successfully and helped them save, $200,000 each, whatever the real number is. Say, I'm really excited. We're out in the market raising money because, and don't say like, oh, I've just got volunteers. Just say, because I've got a team of 3 amazing developers who want to join and I need to raise money to fund additional development. So rather than positioning it as like, oh, I don't really have anyone working with me, like I just have volunteers, position it as, I've got these amazing developers who want to join my team and I need to fund our expansion. And then that
Okay.
would be very compelling.
Thought.
So, but that was a good start. That was a really, really good start. So you can keep working on it.
All right.
Um, yeah, and you went a little bit over, but it wasn't terrible. All right, cool. Thank you, Brian. I know Matt has another question. Hey, Matt.
All right, Erica, I think I might give you my 60-second pitch. You ready?
Mhm.
4 years of running businesses in Rockaway Beach has taught me that once people get to the beach, they just want to relax. They don't want to get up off their beach towels, find a restaurant, wait in long lines, and then walk away all the way back to the beach. My name is Matthew Blantz, and I'm here today to introduce my company, Comer. What if you could take back all your leisure time and let someone else worry about the snacks? That's where Comer comes in. Using Comer app, you can browse menus, order and pay for food, products, or services, and have them delivered to your exact location on the sand. It's easy to use. Simply confirm your location by dropping a pin, choose what you want, and at checkout, take a selfie to make it easy for us to find you. You're happy, and so are businesses. In Comer, local businesses have a powerful marketing tool that gives them access to a new sales channel, directly targeting customers on their beach. Our business model is simple. We take a 15% commission from the food vendor, and a $5 delivery fee from the customer. So next time you're at the beach, choose Comer. Thank you.
All right, that was really good. Actually, I thought that was fantastic. It was really simple. It helped me understand the problem, your solution, as well as the market opportunity. The only thing that I would maybe just kind of like throw in there a little bit, even though the 15% and $5 is great, is, sort of positioning a little bit of the market opportunity a little bit more. So maybe even if you just have
Okay.
information on Rockaway Beach, you could say something like, we started off on Rockaway Beach and, there with full penetration, we have the ability to do, you know, 30,000 orders in one summer or whatever it might be. If there, we can do, however many orders per month, just so that people can get an idea of like the size and scale of the revenue opportunity. Um,
Okay.
and then talk a little bit about, we know that we can expand this to, you know, hundreds of other beaches and parks, across the country. So that was the only thing that was missing was, why is this a big opportunity, right? And then
Okay.
I might just throw in one little thing about, just sort of making it very explicit, um, why restaurants don't already have the ability to do this, right? So that is like not
Oh,
100%
okay.
clear. Like, what exactly is it you're doing that um, is making this easy for restaurants versus, right now when they're using their own delivery person or Seamless or whatever. So I think just making that a little bit clearer would be helpful.
Yep, got it. Okay, that's kind of hard to put in 60 seconds, but I
It
think
is, but you know what? I mean, you were getting there. You were getting there. It was good, and it
okay.
wasn't really like rambling on too long. I thought it was really good. So we're aiming for 60
Um,
seconds, but yeah. And
Perfect. Awesome.
are you thinking about doing the elevator pitch, or are you going to put together slides for your investor pitch?
We'll put together slides.
Okay,
We'll
awesome.
make
I
it
look
happen.
forward to seeing that. All right, really good. Thank you, Matt. Great. Now, who else would like to practice their elevator pitch or has questions about doing a presentation or anything? Okay. Hi, Michael.
Hey,
Hi,
can you
Mike.
hear me?
Yep,
Sorry, I forgot I had my phone on mute. Had to get it
that's
unlocked real quick. So.
okay. Okay,
Yeah, so I thought I'd give the elevator pitch another shot here and get some feedback on that.
awesome.
So I'm Michael with Practical VR, and we're approaching an age to where we move away from screens, right? Right now, if you want to interact with digital content, you have to look at a screen, whether it's your phone, whether it's your TV, whether it's your computer monitor, right? We're moving into an age to where the world becomes your screen. Your digital reality and your normal reality will collide and merge in a way that you've never seen before. You've seen the headsets, Vive, the HoloLens. They're starting to hit the market. Brands are really looking for a way to engage consumers in new ways and in more intelligent ways. What we're doing is we're creating a product to serve the next generation of advertisements. We're going to engage consumers in ways never seen before by placing advertisements spatially aware in an intelligent way. We can spawn ads behind you. We can spawn ads in different corners of the room. We can see how long someone's looking at an advertisement. We can see what direction they look away from an advertisement. And we can make sure that this is done in a way that's not the 90s pop-ups invasive way.
Okay.
People have projected this industry to hit around $120 billion by 2022. And our goal is to make sure that every developer has the tools that they need to monetize the applications they build in this world.
All right, awesome. Is that the end?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I thought that was a really good start. So good job. It did feel a little, it did feel a little kind of like you were sort of going on and on a bit, but it was good. I think it was a very good start. There were a couple times that you used a little bit of terminology that I would say is in that kind of like, buzzword type thing, like spatially aware and things like that. Because people are going to be like, "What? I don't know, exactly what you mean by that." One of the things that I think would be really great for you to include in your elevator pitch, and I like the way that it started out, was remember we talked about how basically ad serving went from desktop to mobile, and now it's going from mobile to AR, VR, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would highlight that story because that's something that people can understand. You could say, in 2010, ad spend on, in 2010, only 10% of ad spend, digital ad spend was on mobile. By 2016, 80% of ad spend
Okay.
moved
Or should I
from
tell the story
desktop
of a
to mobile.
company? Should I be like, in 2006, a company called AdMob was founded. 3 years later, they were purchased by Google for $750 million.
That's a great story, but I would like preface it with, let's just look at the market, right? We saw a huge shift in ad spend from desktop to mobile. Now that, and when that happened, AdSense, captured that market early and was purchased by Google for whatever it was, $700 million. So let's say, what was the change in the market? What was the company that took advantage of it? And you can say, we know that 5 years from now, there's going to be a similar shift to AR, VR. And my company is going to be the one to take advantage of that move to provide monetization opportunities for developers of AR, VR applications. There's also like some movies and stuff that have come out, where they show like the ads that just sort of pop up as you're, walking through the mall or whatever. I'd even maybe kind of
Right,
like
right.
reference those a little bit because I think when people are trying to picture what this is, there is something that people have already seen. And like, I forget what movies it's been in, but there's, a lot of sort of like futuristic movies where they show that like when you're walking through, it like recognizes who you are and, serves you an ad. Um, so that'll give people kind of an idea of like, hey, that reality is almost here, and we're going to be the ad serving platform that enables people to monetize.
Okay.
So I think that
Awesome. I
description would be
appreciate
good
that.
because it'll help somebody very quickly kind of understand exactly what it is you do. And then, yeah, on the end, I mean, I thought that was great. Obviously you highlighted the market opportunity. I think the business model is pretty obvious. I think the one thing that I'm not sure that you mentioned was kind of like, why you need to raise money and what you're doing with it.
That's the challenge right now because right now we don't need to raise money.
Oh,
We're
okay.
not planning to have a
You don't
round
need to
for
say anything
another
about it.
5, 6 months. So
Yeah. Then you don't need to say anything about it. Then
okay.
that's good.
So
All right.
that is a question though that comes up from that. So next week, for instance, at demo day, I want to pitch to get the practice and get some
Okay.
exposure
I
and
mean,
create some
usually,
relationships. But
if you had pitched me that, I would just say, "Oh, well, are you raising money?" And then you could say, "Hey, we're not raising money right now, but we will be, in 6 months. I'd love to keep in touch with you." That would be kind of where you
okay,
go from that.
all right. I just don't want to turn anyone off because I'm like, no, I don't need money.
Well, you will eventually. Just you can say, we're
Right.
not raising money right now, but we plan to, do a Series A later. But I thought that
Understood.
was really
Thank you.
good. Cool. And so, are you
Awesome.
going to do an elevator pitch or a presentation next week?
I'll put together a deck and
Okay,
I'll do the
awesome.
presentation. Yeah.
Very much looking forward to it. All right, thank you. Hi, Jamie.
Hey, Erica.
How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good.
So I'm planning doing a 60-second pitch now, and then next week I'm also going to do a full presentation.
Great.
Okay. All right. Here we go. So Ping Momo helps families carpool their kids with people they trust. Finding safe transportation for our kids is the number one challenge for many busy families today. The real problem here is that parents are constantly forced to make decisions that end up impacting their jobs. Or even worse, sometimes the kids end up taking a back seat when it comes to participating in after-school activities. It doesn't have to be this way. I'm Jamie Velez, and I created Ping Momo to help solve this universal need for parents everywhere. Our mobile app helps families connect with other local parents who are willing to drive each other's kids. Safety and security is at the heart of everything that we do, and our number one goal is to give parents peace of mind knowing that the kids are always safe. There are over 80 million parents in the U.S. alone that could benefit from our solution. I am seeking a 100,000 pre-seed round in exchange for a 10% equity stake in our company. If you're looking to join a mission-driven company that's going to create a big social impact, we would love to meet with you. Thank you.
Okay, that was really good. It seems like you did some good work on it. So I really like what you did. The one thing is, I feel like in the beginning it wasn't really 100% clear what you're doing, right? You're like talking about people's jobs and, the kids, but really this company is about organizing a really seamless way for people to get their kids to carpool. So, maybe even just starting out with a question like, can you believe that it's 2017 and nobody's created an efficient way for your kids to carpool to games together?
Right.
And then kind of set a scenario, my kid is going to, I have 3 kids and, they're going to 3 different sports tournaments or games on the weekends. And I'm constantly, in some email thread trying to find them a carpool. It's really inefficient. And, we'd love to find a way for people to be able to solve this problem and make it, sort of a fun, easy, safe, trusted experience. So, make sure that from the beginning, you're
Yep.
setting exactly what it is, right? That, people need to carpool, particularly for children, right, who have a lot of activities. I love the fact that you brought up, that, the working parent, who can't necessarily get their kid to the soccer practice of the game, like this is going to help them. That'll provide like safety, like, I mean, there are so many interesting things that you can sort of build out here, but really just saying, it's still a problem, right? Like every single person who has kids knows that there is no easy solution for kids to carpool to sports events or, after school activities or whatever it might be. So let's just make that very clear from the beginning. Then we can
Excellent.
talk about your solution. The other
Excellent.
thing is I would not necessarily say that you're going to give up 10% of the company for this investment because like you don't know actually what it's going to be. And to be honest, that would be very, very low in terms of, you know, you giving up 10% of the company is giving up a lot of the company. So like why lowball yourself like before you even heard what they're willing to pay? So you can say, we're doing a pre-seed round. You can say 100,000. I mean, that's fine. It's a bit on the smaller side, but you can say, we're looking for $100,000 to get this off the ground, but don't necessarily attach a price to it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, and to be honest, those numbers were kind of placeholders.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's good feedback. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Yeah, and then you can say, I'm pretty sure you did, but definitely if you're going to say, hey, I'm raising $100,000, you're going to say I'm raising $100,000 to do X, Y, and Z. And
Okay.
then that's really good. But I thought that the presentation was really good in that you sounded very confident. It was very clear. You didn't use like any complicated words. So it was a really, really good start.
Great. Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. Who else wants to practice their pitch? We haven't heard from Charu or Sunil or Yoshi. Any of you guys? Last chance? No? All right. Well, I guess everyone's had a chance to ask all of their questions. Hopefully you guys learned a lot about what's expected during the diligence process from this little presentation today. And if you guys have specific questions about things, feel free to reach out to me. Next week we'll be doing a little bit more info on the like actual deal structuring documents. So we'll be going over that a little bit so that you guys can get examples of, and I think I put it in the Slack channel already. So like, what is a safe note? What is, they're really not, safe isn't really a note, but what is a safe? What is the KISS? What is a convertible note? What is preferred equity? What are the different sorts of investment structuring tools that are available to you that might be a good fit for your company as you're going out to raise? Who are some of the interesting investors that you should reach out to and start talking to. So it's going to be a lot of fun. That's kind of like the nerdy stuff that I love. So I want to thank everybody for joining office hours today. It was really good to talk to you all. You guys are killing it on your presentations. And don't forget to sign up for a spot for next Thursday to either do your elevator pitch or practice your actual presentation. I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody does. All right, so have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Make sure that you show up tomorrow because it's very valuable. You're basically getting to chat with some, $600-700 an hour Silicon Valley lawyers for free. So it's certainly worth your time. All right, guys, have a great rest of the day. Bye.